So the purpose of including that information on the 30-inch drain line was just to address some type of improvements, because right now what happens is there is stormwater that's collected from Route 2, from um, part of Barrettsville Road, and then 2A going into Acton, and it's dumped untreated right into Waters Ponds, which is
Right.
obviously not ideal. And so that's just an attempt to have somebody think of some improvements that we could then give to DOT to say, you really should be doing something with this drain to improve, stormwater management.
But
That,
on that point, I know where Christine's coming from. I think we need to get costs of dredging first and foremost, the dredging
Yep.
project. And there are a couple of other projects hanging on to this. One is the one we just discussed. And I would argue that the Fish Passage project is also, it's a separate project. And, I don't know if that's going to hurt the ability to get responses or not. For me, I'd like to just focus on the dredging disposal aspects of it and to kind of compare that cost with what we had before. And so, I don't know, the stormwater project, the Fish Passage project seem really potentially useful, but almost like different projects that, if we get a good dredging cost and we can come back to the task force and say this is feasible, then maybe we consider those quote unquote add-ons. They're all related, but I'd like to keep this pretty straightforward on dredging.
yeah, I see the value in keeping it straightforward, and and also I think that's a good point about, we want to have people bid on this, and maybe the more complicated it gets, the less likely it will be that people will do that. So
Yeah, I'm not sure that the people who would be interested in dredging disposal would have expertise in Fish Passage. So, companies that don't have that tend to give higher bids for something that they don't know about. So that may be those two may add some complexities to get into clarity on the dredging costs.
Keith, what do you think?
Could we do two RFIs? One just for Fish Passage, a separate one all by itself?
We could, but I think if we are going to do that, I think we would probably need to be a little bit more detailed than where we are right now.
We could sequence those. Keith, I think we should, but for me, dredging comes first. If dredging isn't feasible from a cost perspective, then Fish Passage and anything else doesn't happen. If it is feasible, then we can say, okay, let's go to part C,
I would say, I'm just remembering, so it's my understanding with EA's contract right now, they were tasked to provide an assessment of 5 different alternatives, and we have not maxed that out. Could they use that to develop a slightly more detailed scope for an RFI just for Fish Passage design?
I think that's worth exploring.
And then that pulls it out, like Paul's saying and Chris is saying, and focuses the RFI as we have now written for dredging to keep things simplified.
Yeah, I think the dredging part of this is fine. The only question I had on the dredging part, and maybe I just haven't read it because I tend to read things on my phone these days. The testing of batches of dredge material to see if they have arsenic problems or not, the batch testing, is that in here as part of the scope?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of processing the dredged material.
Is the original RFP include that?
So all of the line items in the bid form and the base bid are taken from the 2022 dredging bid. So that's why I think, because it didn't call out specifically testing, which has to be done, and any contractor will know that.
Okay. If that's sort of a routine cost that is in there, I don't know if that was specialized or not here. I don't know.
I don't because it was not included in the original bid, but it was contemplated because it's identified on the dredge plans where that, 5,000 plus or minus yard area of suspected arsenic contamination is. I think that is contemplated in the item for processing the dredge material.
Do we need to be more explicit? Yeah, I'm less familiar with the original RFP now. Should we be more explicit in the scope to make sure that's included? Just a question.
I can look back to the RFP text to see if that's in there, which I would imagine it is. And if it's, let me just see if I can find that quickly.
And I'm not sure, Keith, how is that done? You have the test per what? Per batch, per day? How do you divide up the pieces for testing?
Yeah, I think there is like a quantity threshold or an area threshold. I don't know off the top of my head, but it is accounted for in the original scope, I believe.
Okay, if it's there, fine. I just didn't see it.
It's not in our RFI.
Do we think it needs to be, or is that, I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm looking right now to see if it was yeah, just we can keep going, but I'll look as we're talking. Contract docs.
This covers my comments on the RFI, do we need those two pieces and the testing? That was all I had.
And then I just had one more somewhat simple question. When you have your base plan, and then you said add alternative 1 and 2, so you're just adding on, right? So it's clear that they know that they're going to create the wetland shelf again, and about 5,000 cubic yards.
Yeah.
That's all clear. It's just additional items then onto that.
Yeah, so that's right. I mean, the way that bidding works for municipal procurement anyway is you develop what's called the base bid. And that is everything that usually the reason that add alts on is because you don't know if you have enough money for those additional items.
Okay.
So you develop your base bid, and then anything that changes with the add alts is what then needs to be captured in those add alts. And, so for example, we would still carry the wetland shelf creation cost into the add alts. So you basically take those other line items, and maybe I can rename them to you would need more sedimentation and erosion controls, presumably. I mean, maybe not, because it's still the same area of the North Field, but the type of erosion controls might change. You would be doing more excavation and more dredging. So those are the items that get carried through. And maybe what I should do is in the add alts, instead of calling it like under add alt 1, it's task or item number 13, maybe I should call it 2A, because 2 is the item number in the base bid. If that makes sense.
I just really asked the question because this part is new to me. So I just know, is this something that's typical that you would just say,
Yes.
add this, do this additional? Yeah, I don't want to complicate things. I just really was looking more for clarification.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think that's helpful. I mean, I don't issue a lot of bids with adults on them. I think I've done it, twice. And I can look back and see how those item numbers, that's getting in the weeds a little bit.
Right.
So I've asked this before, and I'll ask you one more time. you feel we need to have the trucking cost NMI in there, even though Bruce says it'll be his cost. It seems like if they're gonna do it, they're gonna pay for it.
Yeah.
Now it might have to be trucked somewhere else.
Right, so I think we need to understand the cost. We
Okay,
do, you know, we can, when we present it in our proposal, I think we asterisk that and we say this cost is not anticipated to be borne by the town. But we don't have anything in writing, we don't have any agreement formalized, so we should understand what those costs would be.
I think Jeff was pushing that as well in our meeting.
yeah. So do we, if the additional excavated material were not trucked to NMI and had to be trucked somewhere else, it sounded like Jeff said it could always be used. I mean, it would have to be trucked somewhere else. So probably a trucking cost is probably makes sense. It'd probably be a local trucking cost. So maybe that is the local trucking cost. If it's not NMI, it's somewhere else locally, hopefully.
Right.
It's an assumption.
Hopefully the farm.
Yeah,
Prison farm.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
okay.
Those were the only issues I had. Keith, did you have anything?
A lot of the comments I had originally made, I think were addressed, and the quantities seem to be updated, and I don't have any issues with the quantities at this point. It makes sense to me, so I think overall I'm pretty good.
So now I'm questioning my quantities, and so can we just look through them at, on adult one? Let me just pull it up on the screen here. I'll have it open, give me 1 second. Okay. So, all right, so are we in agreement, we're gonna take out these two conceptual design items?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, and then we have the processing. So these numbers came straight from the original bid. That was gonna be 35,800 yards of dredging. And then processing 32,000 and then the wetland shelf creation. Now, these numbers don't add up to 35.8, and I'm not sure why that is exactly. I wish they did, and they don't.
I think the contaminated materials are handled separately, so I think that might be
Yeah,
deleted out of
true.
that.
That's right. So minus the 32,000, and that equals 3,800, which was 6 tons. That's far less than 3,800 yards. But I think we're just, I mean, I would like to just kind of go with what we have. You guys tell me what we need, what we should do here.
Yeah, I think if there's some slight difference there, it's not gonna be a drastically different bid, so I think it's fine for
Okay.
this point.
Okay, all right. That's sounds good. So then for adult one, we're dredging 50,000 yards. And then I said, I took out so let me go back up here. So we dredged 35,800 yards, but we're only processing 32,000 yards of that. That's a difference of 3,800 yards. Okay. You with me?
Yes.
So in adult one, what I did was, we've got 50,000 yards to dredge. We're only gonna process 46,200, which is that same difference again of 3,800 yards. And I did the same thing under the 100,000 concept. I just took out that 3,800 yards. I carried that through.
Is that approximately the amount that's going to the wetland shelf?
It's not, so there's 4,470 is going to the wetland shelf. So I just carried those numbers through to be consistent.
Sure.
And then what I did was then I said, I think I made a mistake here, because I said 50,000 yards of subsoil excavation is going to be, Northfield subsoil, and then that's going to be transported, but this number is actually 49,500 yards. 50,000 times 1.4 would be 70,000 yards, so I think this number should be 70,000. And I don't know if anybody wants to check my math on that. But do you see what I'm saying? So we are excavating 50,000 yards, and then we're going to truck that 50,000 yards, but we're converting it to tons, and the conversion ratio of cubic yards to tons is 1.4. So rather than 64,680, I think this should be 70,000. And I realize I sent this to you late last night, and so nobody's really had a chance to look at it. So if people want some time at the end of the day to sort of, take a look at this, I'm totally fine with that. But what I'd like to do is just change this now to 70,000 and then,
Yeah,
okay. And then if you wouldn't mind, I mean, I can highlight it so it's clear.
I think any
Yeah.
changes we should just make now and
Okay,
hope to prove it
we'll go
and
for the best.
go, yes.
Okay. Does that make sense, what I'm talking about,
yeah.
Yes.
Keith?
It does, yeah, it's important to just, for me, just to reiterate that I think we're looking to get the cost to transport just because that's what Jeff Quick was recommending we do, not that it's like necessarily part of
Yeah.
budgeting that, for that plan. That's, yeah, I'm good.
Okay, and then the same for this, that should be instead of 100 and to be honest, I don't recall my logic, of where I got to this, but this should be, instead of 134,680, it should be 140.
Right.
Well, are you subtracting the shelf material from that?
Oh, no, I think that's what I was doing, but I shouldn't, because that subsoil excavation is just material. It's gonna get excavated and then trucked.
Right, but if you're dredging 100,000, you're not putting all of that in the field. Right?
Oh, that's exactly what I did. That is exactly what I did. Yep,
Yeah, so go back to the previous numbers.
Yeah.
There was a method to your madness, Delia.
yeah.
You forgot it.
I did. I should have written it down. Okay, yep. All right, sounds good. And I'll remove these, and then somebody wants to make a motion.
Did you put back the original numbers then?
I did.
So are we all good?
Yeah,
I make a motion to approve the RFI as prepared right now for the three dredging alternatives at Warner's Pond.
and removing the stormwater and the fish passage projects.
Correct, removing the, stormwater and fish passage portions.
I second that.
Let's vote on it. Aye.
I
And I'm an I.
okay.
So
Awesome.
we're good. Excellent.
Super.
So I noticed, Delia, that you put the date of next Wednesday to get bids back.
Yeah.
Good, that makes sense. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense, but I like it.
Yeah, I hope we get responses.
Right,
So I will keep you posted on that, and I believe we have a meeting, oh no, not next Wednesday.
not until
We have
the
a meeting.
15th or something. I don't know, couple,
Yes, I think it's next, I don't have it written on this calendar.
next Wednesday. It's an unusual day. I think it's the
Yeah.
Wednesday,
I think it is, so hopefully we'll have
13th.
something to talk about.
Right, that would be great.
Yep, okay, I'll work on this, I'll package it up, I will copy you on or I'll send you the final version that gets distributed.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks
Okay.
all.
Thank you
Yeah,
all.
thanks, everybody.
All right, I guess the
Yeah.
meeting is closed then as of 2:25.